I was 4 days into a solo cross-country drive, somewhere in Arkansas, when fatigue hit me hard. It was after 10 p.m., and I didn't want to risk pushing through another hour on dark, winding back. I pulled off at a tiny, worn-out place called Asterisk Oak Hollow Lodge. You know, the typed-in fluorescent sign, gravel parking lot, pine trees everywhere. The kind of motel that hasn't seen a renovation since the 80s. The lobby was empty except for a single desk clerk, gray-haired guy with a nasal voice and yellowing name tag that read Gary. I stepped up to the counter and said, "Hey, I need a room for the night." Before I could say anything else, he looked at a small clipboard, smiled faintly, and said, "Ah, you're Mr. Liam Carter, right?" I paused. "Yeah." He nodded, like he expected that. Then he handed me a brass room key with a plastic tag. Room 9. I hadn't even shown him ID. "There's already a note," he added. "Says you'll be checking in late. Do not disturb." Very clear handwriting. He held up a small piece of paper. On it, written in neat cursive, were the words, "Check-in complete. Room 9. Do not disturb." Liam Carter. It was my full name, spelled perfectly. I felt a chill crawl up my back. "I never sent that," I said, trying to laugh it off. "Must be some weird mix-up." Gary just shrugged. "Well, your name's on the note. Room's clean. Paid in cash." "Paid? Yep. Earlier this afternoon." Now I was getting uneasy. "Did you see the guy who paid?" Gary scratched his cheek. "Didn't see him personally. Envelope was in the drop box. Note inside. Said to get it ready by nightfall." I hesitated, glancing around the lobby. It was small, dimly lit, and smelled faintly of mildew. "You want a different room?" he asked. I shook my head. If someone was pulling a prank, they'd picked a hell of a way to do it. He handed me the key. Room 9. End of the left wing. I stepped outside into the cold. There were only 5 or 6 cars in the lot, all dark. The hallway lights buzzed weakly, casting flickering shadows across the concrete walkway. Room 9 was tucked at the very end. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room was normal. Bed made. Lights off. TV remote on the dresser. My name wasn't carved into the wall or anything. But there was something strange. On the desk by the window, there was a small notepad with a single sheet torn out, and underneath it, an identical pen to the one Gary used at the front desk. I checked the trash can. The torn page was in there. Crumpled. I pulled it out, unwrapped it. Same handwriting, same message. Check-in complete. Room 9. Do not disturb, Liam Carter. It hadn't been dropped off. It had been written here, in this room. I checked the bathroom, closet, under the bed. No one. I locked the door, bolted it, and sat on the edge of the bed with my phone in my hand, debating whether to call someone. But who? The cops. What would I even say? A prank. Identity. Theft. Paranormal nonsense. At around 1 a.m., I finally lay down and shut my eye. And that's when I heard it. The doorknob turning. I bolted upright. It rattled, click, 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 click. Asterisk then stopped, followed by the slow scrape of something across the outside of the door. Not scratching, dragging like a coat hanger or a nail across wood. I sat frozen, holding my breath. Then came a knock. Not hard, just a gentle tap. I didn't move. No voice followed. No footsteps away. I waited nearly 10 minutes before crawling across the room and peeking out the window through the curtain slits. No one there. But there were fresh shoe prints in the frost-covered concrete just outside the door, and they were facing inward, toward the room. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. At dawn, I checked out. Gary wasn't there, just a younger woman who didn't know anything about my reservation or any handwritten note. I showed her the paper. She blinked, confused, said no one else on staff wrote like that, said there was no record of a Liam Carter booking in their system at all. I asked if room 9 had any cameras. She shook her head, said they used to, but they were ripped out years ago after an incident. I didn't ask what incident. I left without turning back. But sometimes, when I stay in hotels, I check the front desk under a different name. Because if someone out there is writing my name before I arrive, I don't want them to know where I'm going next. Last fall, I was driving cross-country from Colorado to Oregon for a new job. I was doing the whole trip solo, splitting it over a few days, stopping wherever I could find cheap motels. Nothing fancy, just a bed, a shower, and a deadbolt. On my 3rd night, I was somewhere along Highway 20 in Idaho. I don't even remember the name of the place. The guy at the front desk, mid-50s, greasy ponytail, barely looked up from his phone. I gave him cash. He handed me a key with a crooked plastic tag that read Room 6. The sign just said, Rest easy in flickering red letters. I don't know why, but something about it made my skin crawl. It was the kind of spot where the vending machine outside still sold glass bottles of soda, and the check-in office doubled as a tiny convenience store. It was already close to midnight when I pulled in. The room was nothing special. Cracked wallpaper, stained carpet, dusty air conditioner. I was exhausted. I dropped my bags and turned on the shower to let it heat up. That's when I noticed the humming. It wasn't the pipes, at least it didn't sound like it. It had a rhythmic quality, almost like a low electrical buzz. Steady, pulsing, and it was coming from the wall behind the shower tiles. I pressed my hand to the ceramic. The tiles on the other side were cool, just that one wall in the center, embedded into a wall behind a one-way mirror, pointed directly into the shower. Old wiring. I stepped back, heart pounding, towel still wrapped around me. I stared at it for a long time, waiting to see if it would move. That didn't stop. Then another, and another. No big deal. At first I told myself to ignore it. It's just an old motel. Narrow, unfinished. Next to some names was a small mark. Next to others, a word written in shaky pen, like a hidden crawl space running behind the row of motel bathrooms. And in that space, barely lit by a blinking red light, was a camera rig mounted on a tripod. Recording. A thick black cord ran from it along the floor and disappeared behind the concrete. Hollow, I grabbed my bag, phone, keys left, everything else. I didn't even check out. I peeled out of that parking lot at 1:06 a.m. and didn't stop driving until the sun was up. Not all of them, just a small square section, like maybe 10 inches wide. But when I stepped into the shower, I couldn't stop staring at that wall. The humming got louder when the water was running, and I swear, I felt something, a slight breeze coming from behind one of the tiles near my chest. Called the sheriff's department, sent them the photo I took of the list. They said they'd investigate, but I never got a call back. I turned off the water and dried off, but I couldn't shake the feeling. Curiosity got the better of me. I took the end of my electric toothbrush and started gently tapping the tile. One of the tiles was loose. I pried it open from the edge. It popped off with a small snap. Satellite view, same. Like it had never existed. But I know I was there. I still have the photo of the clipboard on my phone. Still have the receipt tucked in my glove box. Behind it wasn't a pipe or insulation. It was glass, or more specifically a lens. A camera lens. My stomach dropped. It didn't, but the humming. I went back into the main room, grabbed the little lamp from the nightstand, and smashed it against the corner of another tile. Within a few minutes, I'd cracked enough away to reveal what was really behind the wall. There was a room on the other side. There was also a chair, just a single folding chair, facing the camera, and a clipboard. I pulled it out and flipped through the pages. It was a list. Dozens of names, room numbers, and dates. Some were scratched out, voided. Near the bottom, I saw my name, room 6, today's date, and next to it, not yet. I didn't stop to think. I reported it, of course. A few weeks later, I checked the location on Google Maps. The Rest Easy Inn wasn't there anymore. Street view showed a vacant lot, and that humming sound, sometimes, late at night in my apartment, I swear I hear it again, from inside my bathroom wall. My girlfriend Anna and I had been hiking the Trinity Mountains all day, and by the time the sun went down, we were too exhausted to drive the 2 hours back to town. We pulled off near a tiny highway and spotted an old, beaten-up sign that read Whisper Pines Motel. There were maybe 10 in total, surrounded by thick woods and a gravel lot. No lights from the road, no other cars in the lot. Old flannel curtains, a rust-stained sink, wood panel walls. The kind of place that still had a manual thermostat and a Gideon Bible in the drawer. The clerk looked half asleep when we rang the bell. He handed us a key to room 4, said the heat was temperamental, and warned us not to leave food out raccoons. He said the office was a trailer attached to a long strip of single-story rooms. Yeah. Is someone walking on the roof? Back and forth. The kind of walk someone does when they're thinking, or watching. We laughed about it. We were too tired to care. The room was small but warm. After showering and downing a couple of energy bars, we crawled into bed and passed out. That's when the footsteps started. It was just past 11. I was half awake when I first heard them, pacing footsteps directly above our ceiling. I turned to Anna. "Do you hear that?" She nodded, eyes open. We listened. Step. Step. Pause. Then again, crossing back the other direction. I walked several feet back from the building and looked up. No answer. No ringing. I walked back outside and crossed to the trailer. All the lights were off. Window closed. No ladder. No access, no lights, nothing but moonlight on the shingles. I stood there for a while, listening. We assumed maybe a repair guy or maintenance was up there, though that seemed weird at night. But as the footsteps continued, they grew heavier, more deliberate, and the pacing stayed right above our room. Not the others, just ours. At one point, it sounded like whoever it was stopped directly above our bed. That was when I got up and stepped outside. The cold hit, hard dry, mountain air, silent woods all around. Flat roof, no footsteps. But the second I stepped back inside the room, they started again. That time, Anna heard a soft scraping sound too, like something being dragged across the roof. I grabbed my phone and called the front office. It was abandoned. They said the Whisper Pines Motel closed down in 2009. The land was sold and sat vacant after a fire damaged half the rooms. Back in the room, Anna was now sitting up in bed, staring at the ceiling. Her voice was shaky. It's right above us. I stood there under the light fixture, heart pounding, and said aloud, "Hey, who's up there?" No answer. Just footsteps, slow and steady. And then they stopped. That silence was worse than the noise. It was the kind of stillness where you can hear your own breathing and something else breathing too. That's when the ceiling made a sound, then another, like fingers drumming right above my head. I told Anna to pack her stuff. We were getting out. I opened the door and every single outside light was off. The lot was pitch black. The moon was gone behind clouds. My headlights were the only glow. And when I turned to lock the door behind us, we both heard something from the roof. A low groan. Not mechanical, not an animal. Something like a voice trying to speak through clenched teeth. We didn't wait. We bolted for the car and didn't even bother returning the key. An hour later, safely on the road, we called the local sheriff's office. I checked the location the next morning on Google Maps. There were no listings, no reviews, just a gray shape in the woods with a label, permanently closed. I still think about that pacing, the deliberate way it always stayed above our room, the way it stopped when I stepped outside, and the fact that whatever was up there never once came down. It was around 1:30 a.m. when I pulled off the highway in northern Nevada. I'd been driving cross-country for work and badly misjudged how far I could go in one night. I didn't care how it looked. I just needed a bed and 4 hours of sleep. There was nothing but desert for miles, and my eyes were burning from fatigue. The only lit building I saw was an old one-story motel called the Elkhorn Lodge. Flickering sign, gravel lot, and a vending machine glowing weakly outside the office. The guy at the front desk barely spoke. No small talk. He slid me a room key for room 104 and pointed down the hallway without a word. I figured I'd grab a bag of chips and call it a night. It felt more like renting a hiding spot than booking a room. Queen bed, microwave. I'd be gone for less than a minute. Curtains that didn't quite close. The desert air was oddly warm, too warm for how late it was. No cars in the lot, no highway noise, just silence. I dropped my stuff and collapsed face first onto the mattress. The unit was basic but clean. About 20 minutes later, my stomach growled. I realized I hadn't eaten since lunch and spotted the vending machine outside near the front office. I didn't even bother locking the door. Big mistake. I walked down to the machine, popped in some change, and made my pick. When I came back around the corner, something felt up. No way someone could have entered from the back. I hadn't heard anything, and I'd only been gone 90 seconds. My room door, the one I'd left fully closed, was now cracked open. Asterisk. About 3 inches. I could just barely make out the shape of the bed and what looked like a figure sitting at the edge, facing the wall, completely still, not moving, just breathing. But worse, the chain lock was latched. Nothing. The lot was still empty. No creak of the mattress, no shift of weight, just silence. The office was dark. From the inside, I froze, raspy, chain unlatched, lights off, coming from just inside the room. Not snoring. It took him 2 full minutes to shuffle out from a back room. My phone was still charging. My bag was exactly where I left it. No signs of forced entry, no open windows, not sleep breathing, deliberate, awake. There was no other door. I crept up slowly, heart thudding, and pushed the door gently with one finger. No lights. It moved slightly, but stopped at the chain, which rattled like someone had just locked it. That's when I heard it, breathing, faintly. I backed up and looked around. Not usually, but we're full tonight, I whispered. No answer. I pressed my ear to the gap in the door. I stepped back and thought about what to do. I didn't have my phone. I'd left it charging by the bed. I didn't have a weapon. I didn't want to yell or knock in case this was some unstable squatter or worse. Then the breathing stopped. I didn't hear footsteps. Then the chain rattled again, like it was being undone. That was enough. I ran back to the office and banged on the door, yelling for the clerk. I told him someone had gotten into my room, that the door had been locked from the inside, that there was someone in there now. He didn't react much, just grabbed a ring of keys and motioned for me to follow him back to 104. When we got there, the door was fully closed again. He knocked, called out, then unlocked it and pushed it open. No one inside. The bed was untouched. I asked him if there were any connecting rooms. There weren't. Just a single entrance, he said, with a flat expression. You're not the first one to say that. I asked what he meant. He just shrugged. We don't put guests in 104. I looked at the other rooms. All of them were dark. No cars. He turned, walked back to the office, and left me standing there. I didn't go back in. I grabbed my keys, got in my car, and drove 4 hours straight until sunrise. A week later, I looked up the Elkhorn Lodge. Reviews were scarce, but I found an old forum post from 2012. Room 104 door was locked from inside when I got back. Heard someone breathing. Clerk said it happens sometimes. Never going back. I haven't either. But sometimes, in hotel rooms when I travel, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and swear I hear the faint sound of breathing right outside the door. I was driving alone through the Mojave when my car started overheating. I'd been on the road for 12 hours already, and my GPS was glitching from heat or dust or both. By the time I pulled off at the next exit, the sun was down and the desert air had turned bone dry and freezing. There was only one place to stay, a tiny roadside motel called the Sundown. A faded neon sign buzzed dimly, and the place looked half abandoned. But I didn't care. I needed rest and a few hours of AC. A woman behind the desk checked me in without much interest, handed me a metal room key, and gestured vaguely toward room 7. The lobby smelled like stale coffee and mothballs. I remember her warning as I turned to leave. Don't try the ice machine. It's been out forever. I nodded, but barely registered it. Room 7 was what you'd expect in towels. Scratchy sheets, a TV bolted to the dresser. But it was quiet, peaceful. Even I was asleep in under an hour. At around 2 a.m., I woke up thirsty. Bone-dry mouth, desert air. I looked around for bottled water, but of course there was none. I remembered passing the ice machine outside between rooms 5 and 6. I figured I could melt some down in a glass. He didn't glance at me as I approached, just stared straight ahead, at nothing. No ice. It was dead cold. No power light. I remembered the clerk's words. I stepped out into the night barefoot, holding a plastic cup. That's when I saw him. A man standing completely still next to the ice machine. I awkwardly reached around him and pushed a lever on the machine. He didn't look homeless or like a guest, just out of place. Wearing an old faded t-shirt, cargo pants, hands at his sides. She leaned in. I checked out around noon after a mechanic patched up my car nearby. Pale, wore a torn gray shirt. Excuse me. Nothing. He didn't move. No sound. I mumbled, sorry, backed off, and returned to my room. Okay, but the guy, he was real. He was standing right next to it. I walked right by him. The power had gone out. No AC, no running water, and by the time they found him, he was already gone dehydrated, with his hand still clutching an empty ice bucket. The next morning, he was gone. I assumed he was some other guest, maybe just weird, or sleepwalking. It was unsettling, but not enough to report. But when I stopped in the lobby to grab a soda, I asked casually. Some said they heard the ice machine humming when it shouldn't, but no one ever got close. Hey, that guy who was standing by the ice machine last night, does he work here? The woman at the desk looked confused. Let it rust, what guy? The one out by the ice machine. Around 2 a.m., just standing there. Her face lost color. Tall. Tried to forget about it. I nodded. She stared at me a moment longer and then said, flatly, that machine hasn't had power since 2011. She didn't smile. There's no one else staying here last night. You were the only guest. That stopped me cold. She went on to tell me that years ago, a man had collapsed beside that very ice machine during a heat wave. He was staying there alone. They shut the machine off after that. The staff had gotten used to rumors, guests claiming they saw someone out there in the middle of the night. I left without finishing my soda. 2 nights later, I was home. But around 2 a.m., I woke up again. Same dryness in my throat. Same heavy feeling. I walked to my apartment kitchen. and I swear to God, I heard the soft hum of an ice machine right outside my window. I live on the 3rd floor, and the air that night. Asterisk, it was freezing.